Hi everybody, my name's Dino. Welcome back to the R100 community. We have a garden find project to show you today. This is mine. Full disclosure, I actually purchased this bike back in sort of February, March time 2020, just before we went into lockdown. So it was a great project for me while we was all furloughed and locked down, and so on and so forth. It's a 1981 BMW R100cs. Now, I always wanted a cafe racer project, and I always wanted an R100 as a cafe racer project. However, this wasn't the bike to do it with. After checking all the numbers, which all match, after we purchased the bike, it is a genuine CS. It's got a great colour scheme, it's genuine colour scheme. I didn't feel like this was the bike to pull apart. I have another bike for a cafe racer build, another R100, mono lever one this time, so look out for that video in the future. But for now, let's talk about what we've done to this R100cs over the last few months. So we pulled it out of the garden where it had half a tarpaulin over it, and it had been sat there for 11 years. Okay, hadn't moved from that spot for 11 years. So here you can see we pulled it round to the front of the house. This is before I got the bike home, and you might be thinking, you know, seen worse, and definitely you are right. We've all seen worse, but carry on watching this video to see just what we found as we were going through the bike. So as I just mentioned, I'm not going to cafe racer it. This is just a project just to get it back on the road, keeping a little bit of its patina, if you like, and just having a nice rideable R100 in standard form on the road. So here you can just see the controls. The choke was seized, the throttle was seized, and everything was generally just a little bit manky, rusty, dirty, oily, all the things you can possibly think of from a garden find bike were all there. So here you can see I've actually got it back to what's actually my old house now, and I've just got it sat down the side of the house, and it's just covered in degreaser from top to bottom, everything you can think of. If I've ever done a project with a bike or a car like this in the past, I always start off by giving it a full degrease, jet wash, outside in the daylight. I always think it's really important just to have a good look at what you're actually dealing with before you start tearing anything apart. You may find something that means the project is just not viable, or you might change your mind with what you want to do with the project. So little tip there, before you start any project like that, whatever it is, get it outside in the daylight, degrease it, let it sit in degreaser, let it soak, spray everything, and give it a jet wash and a hose down and a little bit of a clean, and then start making some plans from there. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that the carburetor and inlet pipes have already been removed in this picture while it's sitting there degreasing, and that's because the carburetors had taken the brunt of the weather over the last 11 years and they needed some particular attention paying to them, as you're about to see in some pictures coming up. So once it was all cleaned off, placed it back in the garage and popped the sump off the bottom just to have a little look inside. There was nothing nasty in there, just some oil, obviously very old oil, but there was just some oil sitting in there, and by hand, didn't try turning it over properly, just turned it over a little bit by hand very carefully. The engine turned over quite nicely, so that was a good sign. I told you the carburetors were bad, and here you can see one of the float bowls removed, and that is not fuel, that is water. The carburetors were absolutely sea solid, full of water, rust. It wasn't good at all. So I didn't want to try and replace the carburetors, I did want to try and save them. So I have the use of an ultrasonic tank. And what I'd normally do with the ultrasonic tank is I would strip the carburetor down first, separate the carburetor housing parts and the jets, and stick them in for a few hours, however long it is needed. But in this case, the carburetors had to go in the tank first for a good few hours. Once they'd been in the tank for a good few hours, we then were able to strip the carburetors down without stripping any threads or causing any damage, and then we were able to separate the jets and the needles and the small components out and get it all into the ultrasonic cleaning tank separately for several more hours. I then went ahead and ordered, amongst loads of other things, some gasket sets, and I did have to change the float needles and a few other components inside the carburetors. So I went ahead and got those ordered up. Luckily we couldn't go visit anywhere, so there was no shot blasting or vapor blasting or powder coating going ahead. It was just getting parts mail order because everywhere was locked down, unfortunately. So here you can see me starting to do some work on the carburetors on my kitchen side. Please don't tell my wife. After I'd been through the ultrasonic tank several times and I had new seals and jets and diaphragms and gaskets and so on and so forth. So here you can see the carburetors after they've been built up, and I actually replaced the choke cables for some small choke cables which I made up and added the little dice on the top just to make the carburetors, the chokes, nice and easy to operate. So in this picture you can see that I've now got the rear end stripped off the bike, and I stripped the rear end off a little bit more than what you can see here. So I actually took the swing arm right out in the end and just gave everything a really good degrease, clean, wire brushed, and then sanded it all off. Okay, while I was there I also replaced and cleaned out the final drive unit, replaced all the rear brake shoes, and the levers on the rear final drive for the brake shoes were all C-solid, so I had to warm those up and take them all apart, get them free, and replace any components that required replacement, and then get it all back together. So once I'd done all that, placed it all back together. In this particular image there's still no new rear brake shoes on there. Like I said, no vapor blasters, shot blasters open, so it's a case of me doing all the work, masking up, giving it a coat of primer and then a coat of black paint. So that's what we did, that's all we could do during the time. So yeah, got that all done, and that was the rear end all going back together, including the rear subframe. While I was there I stripped and repainted all the rear subframe as well. I then had to deal with the lock that operates the rear seat, so you can lift it up and get to the things like the battery and the storage compartment. We had a key with the bike. It did fit the ignition, but the ignition was C-solid, as you'll see in a second, and we couldn't get it to operate the seat latch. So I drilled out the security bolts for the seat latch. I managed to get the seat up, and then I could get the barrel out. Once I had the barrel out, I stripped it down. I managed to reassemble it with the tumblers in the correct order to match the key, and that all works nicely now. So that's a nice little touch that that's all working as it should be without spending any money as well. So here we're just taking off grubby, grimy, corroded engine parts, side stand there, covers, just rubbing everything down, prepping everything, getting rid of the corrosion and getting it painted up as it should be. So here we can see the rear end of the bike all back together, and considering there was no blasting or professional painting taking place. I thought that the rear end came out really well. All the plastics and light plastics and storage compartments that fit on the rear end, I actually popped them in the dishwasher in the kitchen on a couple of hot washes, and they actually came out really well. So that was also another touch. And you can see there's a little before and after of the rear end of the bike. And again, considering it was just all elbow grease and repainting, it came out really well. While I was there, I did also replace any corroded wiring coming from the centre of the bike over to the rear lights, just so that that was all done at the same time. So once the rear end was complete, I then moved on to the front end, and as you can see, I stripped the front end completely out, took the forks out, stripped the forks down. Again, got a load of scrubbing done, rubbing down, prep, repaint anything that needed repainting. Also rebuilt the forks with new fork oil seals and new oil, as you would imagine, and had to deal with the electrics. As I said, the ignition barrel was seized, so I had to get a second-hand ignition barrel, which I managed to find on eBay with a key. And yeah, just had to go through, as you can probably have just seen in the pictures, and apologies, I know they're not the greatest of pictures. There was just loads of wiring that had got cut, was damaged, and it had oxidized down the wiring, so I just went ahead and replaced any wiring that needed to be replaced. Fitted the new ignition switch, managed to clean up, straighten up, and get any corrosion off of the fuse board. And anybody who's worked on these before will tell you that all of those electrics, including that fuse board and ignition switch, are all in the back of the headlight bowl, which makes it really tricky. But once you get your head around it, it's not too bad to sort out. So here you can see an image from the top, and also a before and after, and you can see just how nice the front end came out. Again, without spending loads of money, it's just elbow grease, cleaning, painting, prepping. I did have to replace the handlebar clamps. They had completely rotten through and they weren't going to be safe to ride with, so I did have to purchase some new handlebar clamps and replace those as well. So I also made a new battery clamp, because I couldn't seem to be able to find one anywhere, so I just had this piece of aluminium. Also put some speed holes in there because the kids tell me that's the cool thing to do. So nice little battery clamp for the battery, obviously a new battery as you would imagine, as it had been sitting in the garden for 11 years, and that all came up nice. So a couple of things that I didn't think I was going to be able to save was the front brake discs. They were really bad, but after cleaning them up on a completely flat surface with several sheets of emery paper and wet and dry, they actually came up not too bad. There's no brake judder, and it's since gone through 2 MOTs with those brake discs and caused me no problems at all, so that's really good. The other thing that's worth mentioning that is in a completely separate video, which I will link below this one and also at the end, is how we dealt with the fuel tank. The fuel tank was completely and utterly rotten as a pair. The fuel cap was seized solid and I had to drill it out to get it off and then replace that. There was also a lead replacement pellet set in there which had rotted away and was rattling around in the tank, and there was also a poor quality tank sealer kit in there which, after 11 years of rust and water and God knows what, had also started to fall apart in there. So have a look at the video below. I used a couple of gallons of white vinegar and some bicarbonate of soda and some new fuel taps, and we restored the fuel tank back to new. I've been using it ever since. No problems at all, and it always amazes me. It has a C-Tech smart charger on it in my new garage, not the garage you're seeing now, and it just fires up on the button every single time, and touch wood, has never ever let me down on the road. So in the final picture here, you can see the bike at the MOT station. It went straight through, no advisories, and since then it's obviously gone through another MOT, again no advisories, and in the meantime never let me down. So it's another R100 CS saved that we won't cafe racer. However, if you want to see our cafe racer project, stay tuned on the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share if you want to, and you'll see the cafe racer build start. We've got some other projects going on in the garage which you can also see below. But thanks for watching, guys. Apologies that I only had pictures and not loads of video. It was obviously shot at a time when I wasn't going to turn it into a video, so I do apologise for that. Been great looking back actually, and also great to see a couple of my other bikes in there, my Motor Guzzi V35 and my Ducati ST2. The Ducati was in a similar shape to the R100, and I do have some video footage of that one, so I may pop another barn find video up for the Ducati as well. Again, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe.